Greetings, everybody. We got some new material today. 8 through, what is it? What are the texts? I forget. 15 through 18 or something. Really heavy. Strong stuff. Before going to the new stuff, there's a statement in the new stuff that we're going to cover which refers back to the foundational statement of this conversation. So I want to go back and look at that foundational statement to explain it a little bit more fully. Do you remember the foundational concept of this conversation? Well, it's that there's these that for a human being, there's a fork in the road of whether we pursue fancier version of what every other animal does, or something that no other animal does. Something which no other animal does is explore language and words to the fullest extent, and therefore has things like the Vedas. So, and then he says the way. Then he gives this paradigm that the way to follow one fork is to kind of put yourself with the people who are moving in that direction, and those are the people who are Sri Sangi. Let's just keep that in Sanskrit. And then the people who follow the right path are the sadhus. And if you put yourself in their association, then you get put on that other fork, and you move on that other fork towards moksha or liberation. Then he comes up with the statement, which is kind of foundational, explaining why Sri Sangi is the suction cup or the induction device into the left fork of the road. So he says, Punsa Striya Mituni Bhavam Etam Tayor Mito Hridaya Grantim Mahu. So let us spend a little bit of time going into this statement a little bit more deeply than we usually do, because this is one of the statements that encapsulates or summarizes a lot of Vedic spirituality, both in its true and its kind of misunderstood form. So, what it looks like on face value, what it looks like on the simplest level is Pumsastriya means men and women. Mituni Bhavam means the way that they connect, which means sex. Etam just means this. So the way that men and women sexually unite, tayor, between the two of them, mito means mutually. See, mituni, mito. Mituni means unified, connected. So mito means unilateral, not unilaterally, bilaterally, where the two things have come together. Tayor mito hridaya grantim. It ties a knot from A to B and B to A. In the heart, in other words, the emotions, the feelings, the consciousness, the thoughts of one get tied to the other, and the other gets tied to one. Ahu means to invoke. So it invokes the knot, a mutual knot. So on the surface it looks like, let's say, something like this. The sexual union of man and woman invokes a mutual emotional bond. And that's a very true statement. That's a very true statement. That's one of the purposes of sex. People people that aren't very sexually aware, they kind of and are kind of on the Puritan side of things, kind of just say sex is for kids and that's what it's for. But sex is for several things. So one of them is to establish this knot, and the second part of the verse explains why. Because upon this knot, a whole life can be built. It gives a stability upon which you could build griha and sutta. You can have home and children and family, etc. And you can acquire wealth and have happiness in that context. So this is the simple meaning. Now, the reason why this is the induction to the fork that a human being doesn't really want to go on is when you bond. Well, the new verse that we're going to hear today is really going to throw this upside down. Because the way that this statement is made, it really sounds like a positive thing. The sexual union of man and woman invokes a mutual emotional bond. That's good. And I remember Horyu and many people were like, yeah, I have a nice... We were all kind of, in a friendly way, envious of Horyu's mutual emotional bond. Admiring that and stuff. So this doesn't sound like a bad thing. But in text 16... which is interesting, 8 texts from this one, which is the 8th text, he's going to explain what's really going on, what kind of knot is really being tied. But for now, what he's immediately says is, based upon this knot, we build a bunch of things, and then we define our identity by those things. And so this is what steals the identity from its rightful place and puts it somewhere it doesn't belong. The identity belongs in the self. Identity doesn't belong in the possessions of the self or the relations of the self or the acquisitions of the self. It belongs in the self because the possessions, acquisitions, relations, etc. are temporary. So they can only be temporary definers or limited definers of self. But the paradigm of the two forks in the road is that leading right leads to this whole different type of pleasure, which is incredible and effortless and endless and natural and inherent. But that won't be accessible if the eye is not focused into something inherent, if it's focused extrinsic. But let's look at a little bit at this first line especially, because remember I told you the commentator the commentary that I'm reading along with this text is Vishwanath. Vishwanath says he's not just talking about men and women interaction, he's talking about any interaction between two people forms mutual bond between the two, upon which they build the details of their relationship. So the reason for that is actually very interesting, and it's in the nature of these words themselves. So if we ask, for example, Pumsa means male, Striya means woman. Why? You can learn a lot if you ask why words are used to name the things that they name. Why is a noun used to name this thing? And to do that, you just need to learn some technique called etymology, where you look up how a word evolved to be a reference for an object. So etymology is a really good avenue for pursuing knowledge. Now, if we look at pumsa, what's the etymology for pumsa? If you look up pums, pounce is an English word that we have. Pounce, which is similar to punce or pound. When you hit something, when you pound on something. So a man is described as a pouncer or a pounder or a crusher. And then stria. Stria means to expand something, to blossom it or to make it grow. So, and on one level, this shows the basic psychology of males and females. Why the word pumsa is used to indicate a man, and when it has to do with crushing, pouncing on things, pounding things, hammering things. And why the word expanding, growing, getting bigger is used for a female. That's interesting in and of itself. And you can explain it in many different ways, from the behavior to the psychology. But honestly, the root reason for these descriptions, and some of you who are a little more in tune with this kind of stuff may already know. You may already have caught the fairly obvious theme. It comes actually down to the biological operation of a male versus the biological operation of a female in the sexual union. So but this is not just like let's talk about sex, baby. Let's have a diversion. This is important to understand how this is going to explain Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's comment that this is not. He's not just talking about a man interacting with a woman or a woman interacting with a man. He's talking about a dynamic. And Vishwanath specifically said it will also happen between father and son, and guru and disciple. Were two specific examples. He wasn't saying limited to those examples, but he gave those two specific examples. So, the man is the pounder, the hammer. He's the one that is pouncing upon something, right? So he's the one that's putting something in, and hence it's called pumsa. I think you know what he puts in. And then stria biologically is the one who has to open. So that's what stria means, open. Okay, so now for that rated R, after that rated R segment, what the male-female thing is, and previously I think it may have been Kapila or Prithu. Somebody explained that the supreme being, the all-attractive Bhagavan, exists in this male-female dynamic because that's the inherent dynamic of nature itself. The male-female dynamic is the inherent dynamic of positive, negative polarity, the pumsa and the stria. This is just the way all of the world operates. It's not just human males and human females. It's the way the world, it's the basic principle of things. So the basic principle is described in the pumsa, the word pumsa and stria. What pumsa actually means is the one who puts something in. And what stria really means is the one who opens to accept it. So whenever you have a relationship, you have one side giving and the other side receiving. And it's usually not fixed in stone that it's always one side giving and always the other side receiving. Like in a conversation, the roles constantly switch. But in the union between things, there's always that thing. If an electron travels from one atom to the other, then one is the pumsa and one is the stria. If an idea goes from one person to another, one's pumsa, the other's stria. If it comes back, then the roles reverse. And so that causes mitthuni. And what mitthuni means, unification. between the two. This is how the things unify. When you put ice in water, the water and the ice, they unify. That's called mituni. The coldness from the ice goes into the warmness of the water, and the warmness of the water goes into the coldness of the ice. So that's pumsastriya. And that is what forms their mita granti, their knot or their bond to each other. So this is how nuclear things bond. This is how the reality bonds to each other. It's on this pumsastriya principle. And it's not just males and females, but it's the one who is putting in and the one who is taking. And so Sri Sangi is talking about the people who are not in the receptive opening mood, the people who are in the dominate hammering mood, the people that want to put their energy into stuff. So there's the people that are eager to enjoy and experience the world. Those are the people that get attracted to the left fork in the road. Make sense? So there he explains this thing about what we think is going on. Or in a sense, this is what's going on. It sounds like a mutual emotional bond. But what is the emotion? In our particular case as ignorant beings. What is the mutual bond? Between electrons, it will be different than the mutual bond between Romeo and Juliet, which will be different than the emotional bond between Einstein and the people that he's teaching. So each one will be different. But as a category, what is the emotional bond which forms from people who are mutually in ignorance? That's what he's going to talk about today. All right, so I think we should start with some of the new material now. Let me just check and see. I can't really read so well. But thank you, Laura. I don't know. I can't really keep up with all the stuff that's in there. I can't really keep up with all the stuff that's in there, but so I'll just trust that it's okay. All right, so let's swap over to our newer verses, which are where? Right here. Oh, this is 8 to 14, the hard knot. Then we get 15. Where to go? I'm going to have to turn this on for a second. Okay, here we go. This is... Well, now I'm calling this session stuff we really need to hear. Because this is not stuff that you're going to hear from like Tony Roberts or whatever the inspirational speakers are. This is not I'm okay, you're okay kind of stuff. And Rishabha is himself going to explain why. So let's just jump into it. Putrangs chashishangs chanipo gurorva maloko kamo mananugrahartha itam vimanyur anushishad atajjad Nayojayat kamasu karma murdhan kamyojayan manujo artham labheta nipatyan nasta drashtam higarte. If you're a guardian of people or a guru and you want to achieve my realm, then evoke my affection by reteaching these things to your dependents and disciples with patience, even when they do not understand. If they're befooled with their pursuits, don't give up on them and encourage them to perform those pursuits. What would a human being gain from that? And what kind of person would lead blind people to ditches and push them in? So he has basically concluded saying what he wanted to say, which even myself, I've kind of forgotten exactly what it was. So it would be good for all of us to either go back and look at the streams from the past 2 or 3 weeks, or to just review. Let us do that. We'll just quickly review. Nayam deho deha bhajam niloke. Let's do English. My sons, a human body does not deserve the difficult pleasures sought by stool-eating pigs. Its struggles should instead be divine, because such struggles reward us with tranquil clarity and infinite inherent happiness. The liberating gate is to honor the great. The dark gate is to enjoy the company of those who want to enjoy Stri, women. Great people are equal-minded, pacifying, angerless, endeared, and see good in others. Those who want to forge a relationship with me, the Divine Master, have only appropriate affection, not deep love. This maybe I would word differently. For common people obsessed with physical health and their ambitions for property, sex, and offspring. What he's explaining here is, if the good people are endearing, then why don't they hang out with the people that are trying to enjoy the world? They must not like those people, but I thought you said the good people are endearing. They're endeared. They love people. So what he's actually trying to get across in this verse is that they love people, but the way that you love a snake is different than the way that you love a bunny rabbit. That's what he's trying to get across. I think it is not good to dedicate ourselves to what our senses love. Oh, there's also such an important point here. Remember Rishabdev's whole life. This is at the end of his active period. Before this, he taught everybody how to do karmas. He established all these new sciences. He established all these new fields, and he taught people how to do them, and he performed every single ceremony 100 times so that people would know exactly the right way to do it. But what he's saying is but now he's going to say you shouldn't do that. That's what it sounds like he's saying. You shouldn't do what I just did. So that would be wrong. Like, why would a person spend 50 years setting an example for something and then say, don't do that? What he's saying is, of course, you have to cook, you have to eat, you have to mate, you have to stay warm. Of course, you can't just stop doing those things. But those are not the focus or the reason or the motivator or the dedication. Those are the supports for something else, which is the real dedication and motivation. So I think it is not good to dedicate ourselves to what our senses love. This immediately intoxicates us, causing us to do irresponsible things, which eventually result in suffering, and all this for a body that is not fully real. As much as we are subdued by ignorance, that much we lack curiosity about our true self. As much as we engage in ignorant deeds, that much our minds become tied and bound by our bodies. A mind thus controlled by karma enjoins an ignorance that reinforces the identification of self with incidentals. As much as there is no love for me, Vasudev, to that extent there is no release from this unification with bodily circumstances. So what he's saying is, the more that we get dedicated, we have as our motive the enjoyment of the striye, the enjoyment of the blossoms, of the flowers, of the world, the more that is our focus, the more that we get engaged in activity that is related to the external world. And the more that we get involved in activity, and the more, investment we make into our external lives, the more important it becomes to us, the more it defines us. I am nothing without this. The more it defines us as something external, the more we are screwed, the more we lost any chance of noticing what is actually intrinsically us. And the less there is attraction to a different type of blossom, the consciousness will always be attracted to something which is beautiful. So if there's not attraction to something intrinsically beautiful, then there will be no hope of getting out of that situation. So intrinsic beauty is Bhagavan, the being of consciousness who's the embodiment of all beauty, at the root of all beauty. It's not just knowledge which frees you from ignorance, because there's a lot of things that I know are not ideal, but that doesn't mean that I stop doing them or wanting them or thinking about them, etc., or lamenting them, etc. It's not about knowledge, it's about feelings. Feelings is what motivates action. Knowledge is what creates feelings. Knowledge is what informs us about what we can feel and what we should feel and how we should feel. But it's the feelings which actually motivate the actions. So if you want liberation, it's not a matter of gaining knowledge. It's a matter of gaining emotion via the knowledge. So that's why he says the next thing is, when we don't see our true self-interest, desires for sensual experiences will immediately proliferate and intoxicate even a learned person. All of their principles and knowledge forgotten, they achieve misery by getting encaged in sexuality. Even if you just are learned, but you don't see your true self and the true self-interest and the beauty that's intrinsic within consciousness itself, then you are going to be attracted to some other source of beauty. And that's going to pull you out of yourself. This is what he wants us to teach people. Now he says this statement, coupling of male and female invokes a mutual bond between their hearts. On this, they build a home, property, offspring, friends, and wealth. They become deluded by defining I and mine in relation to these things. The mind revolves around the heart tie. This is it. I can't believe I forgot this. This is really good. The mind revolves around the heart tie, orbiting with the fierce momentum of the many deeds invested in it. If that heart tie were to slacken and unbind, the freed person would be centrifugally shot far away towards a superior state. So now then he explains how you can slacken it. By actions of love for me. That's the basis of everything. It's the love. Love is what forms a bond to something. So if you want to, it's not the bond which is the problem. It's what we are bound to. We're bound to something extrinsic to the self. So how can we be bonded to something which is intrinsic to the self? We have to know about the self and the root of the self, and the self which is the self of the self, Bhagavan. By actions of love for me, the swan guide. By giving up thirst and tolerating the natural extremes. By recognizing the misfortune of everyone, everywhere. And by inquisitiveness into the endeavor to desist. By regularly doing deeds for me and having conversations about me. By association with my divines, by celebration of my qualities, by meekness, equality, and peacefulness, and by the desire to stop defining the self in reference to its body and circumstances. By striving for union with the actual self. By practice of solitude. Like, it is mostly about what we want. We can, that's good news. It's not that hard to change what you want. What you can achieve is more difficult. I want to be a great drummer. It's going to take a long time to become a great drummer. But I want it already. By striving for union with the actual self, by practice of solitude, by taking control of how the self, vitality, and senses interact, by trusting the good, by perpetual studenthood and celibacy, by not allowing yourself to be completely inebriated, and by restricting your words, by seeing my nature everywhere, by knowledge that shines with practical comprehension, by yoga endowed with determination, enthusiasm, and clarity, by deleting the delimiting form, the thing known as I becomes happy. Do not be bewildered by the ignorance-born heart knot, for it is the foundation of all karmas. Completely delete it by the yoga I have described, and then retire from that yoga. That's the preamble to what he says today. Teach this to people. That's his opening statement in today's section. Is now teach this stuff to people. If you are a guardian of people or a guru, teach this. And you want to achieve my realm, which you can only get by my compassion, like, right? If you want to come to me, you can't come to me by force. This is Vishnu speaking. If you want to enter into my realm, you can't barge in. So you'll need to make me want you to be here. So if you want to do that, then teach people this. If you're a guardian of people, that's a nripa. Nripa means king or mom, dad, grandfather, guardian, older brother, older sister, anything. Nripa, somebody who takes care of other people. So the nripa takes care of the putra. The putra is the stri relative to the nripa as the punsa. The putra is the recipient of what the nripa is giving. Or if you are the guru, then that's pumsa, and the shishya, or the disciple, is the stri in the sense of being the recipient of what the guru is giving. If you're a guardian of people or a guru and you want to achieve my realm, then evoke my affection by reteaching. Sorry, I hope I didn't disconnect the universe just now. Let's check and see if the universe is online. Probably too online. We're still online. Thank you, Laura. If you are a guardian of people or le guru, whoops, I also deleted the wrong universe there. I need to get back. I'm back. If you're a guardian of people or a guru and you want to achieve my realm, then evoke my affection by reteaching. What's reteaching? Anushishat. You could say anushishat. You can say means reteaching, so it means continuously teaching. Keep on teaching. But it also means the stuff that what Rishabh is saying, the stuff that I just taught you, reteach it. To atat gyan, to the people that don't understand it. And he says, vimanyu, which means without irritation. And it also implies without pride. And that's really kind of goes hand in hand, because it's kind of pride or self-importance which causes irritation. It destroys tolerance. So why are you going to have patience? Why? Why would a teacher have to have patience? Because people are ignorant. Atakyan. The students don't understand. But he's saying something really interesting. He's saying, don't give up on them. Itam vimanyor anashishad atatyan. Na yoji at karmasu karma mudhan. Don't tell them just to go do their karmas, because they're completely confused about karmas. Karma mudha. They're totally obsessed with, and they're animalistic about it, and they're jackassy about their deeds. Karma mudha. Don't yojiyet. Yojiyet means, kind of impel the action. Don't impel them to go karmasu, to go into their karmas, just because they can't understand your jnana. So people who have studied the Bhagavad Gita have almost always, unless you learned it from somebody who's completely from Neptune, you'll learn that there's 3 basic stages in yoga, which is karma yoga first, leads to jnana yoga, leads to bhakti. So if a person has adhikar for karma yoga, then they may not have adhikar or aptitude for Jnana Yoga. But if a person is right, like Jnana Yoga is more difficult because it requires calmness, patientness, intelligence, thoughtfulness, studiousness, etc. Whereas Karma Yoga is easier. You just do things, do the right things. So generally speaking, when people can't succeed in the Jnana Yoga, they fall back to Karma Yoga, and they should do Karma Yoga. But Rishabdev is saying no. He says, don't give up on this Gyan which supports Bhakti. The knowledge and information which causes people to develop emotions for something real. Don't give up on explaining that. Because that, everyone has adhikar to respond to that. Everybody has aptitude to respond to that. And it's also important to realize that he's the one who established Karma Yoga previously in his life. He established it, clarified it, and showed it. So he's not saying, don't tell them. He's not telling his sons, tell everybody to leave their families and everybody just separate and go into the woods and meditate. He's not telling his sons to do that, and that's not what his sons are going to tell people either, as you look in the following chapters. But you have to do the Karma Yoga that you are aptitude for, that you can't live without, that we can't live without. We have to do that. But we have to always have our aim higher. And we have to always hear information which is higher than the level that we're at. So he's saying if you're the guardian or the guru or whatever, the guide, the punsa, the person who's giving stuff to the other people, then make sure you give them something that will elevate them. Don't be lazy and say, these people don't understand, it's too frustrating, I'm not going to teach them. Just let them do their karma. Just let them only think that karma alone is everything. This is a subtle difference that becomes a huge difference in practice that people don't understand. Karma is important. You can't just tell a person to stop doing their job or to stop wanting to eat sweets or whatever, meat, whatever. You can't just say stop. But you also can't just abandon them and let them just do anything. The real guide has to keep giving them information about what's the next step. What's a little bit better than where you are, what you're doing now. How can you improve? You can't just erase everything that they're doing and stick them in the improved situation because they don't have aptitude for it. But you don't just let them wallow in their unqualified situation. You pull them up slowly. That's what it means. Itam vimanyu ranashishya datatgyan. You have to have patience, vimanyu. Nayojit karmashu karma mudan. Don't tell them to just absorb themselves in karma. Kam yojan manujo artham labeta. Manuja means humans, people that are descendants from Manu. That's how the whole conversation started out, talking about humans. Humans have two choices. Be fancy animals or be different animals. So what good would it be for a human to be a fancy animal, which is basically a fancy version of a stool-eating pig? So that's what he says again. He reiterates it. Kam yojan manujo artam labeta. What are you really going to get by doing your karmas alone? And if you tell somebody to do that, nipadayan nastadrishtum hikarte, aren't you like a person that is telling a blind person to walk over to a ditch and then push them in? This is the thing about people that are just telling us, you're okay, I'm okay, everything is okay. Everything is right, nothing is wrong. It sounds so nice, finally to be accepted and loved. But is that really nice? This person over here is shooting heroin, but I'm okay and they're okay. This other guy over here is killing somebody. Is he okay? Is that okay? I'm okay, you're okay is not okay. That's not okay. You have to say, that is not okay. It should be better. You should be better. You can move better. You can get higher. You could be better. And with patience and understanding, right now you're here and this is where you need to be and work on this, but you can evolve to be better. Then he says, Loka swayam shreyasi nashta drishtir, yorthan samiheta nikama kama, anyonya vaira sukalesha hetur. This is part I like. Sukalesha hetur, ananta dukkam chanaveda muta. This is the verse I said is going to flip us back to the Punsastriya Maituni Bhavam Etam Hridaya Grantim Ahu. He says the world is blind. He just gave this analogy about telling a blind person to walk over to a ditch and then pushing them in. And he says, well, guess what? The world is blind to their swayam shreyasi. The world is blind to their own best interest. The befooled cause themselves endless troubles. They are fools. Don't tell a fool to keep doing foolish things. It would be like putting a blind person at the edge of a ditch and pushing them in. And now he says, this world is blind. They can see colors and shapes, but they're blind to what is really going to make them happy. And they're fools. The world is full of fools. And they cause themselves endless troubles by creating mutual hatred and rivalry with each other, by striving with passionate greed to achieve things that hardly provide a crumb of pleasure. So here's where he says, now he's got this word anyonya. Anyonya means mutual. So it's a direct reference to the 8th text where he said, Mito Hridaya Granta. Tayo Mito Hridaya Granta. The mutual thing that forms between people. What he's saying here is the way that people, in our ignorance and our blindness, the kind of relationships that we form with each other, don't make mutual bonds of love. They make mutual bonds of vaira. So vaira is a word that derives from vira. And vira means heroism and force and prowess. Vaira means that kind of competition and contest that those type of people engage in. What we have in our world, in our so-called love relationships, is mutual competition or veiled competition for teamwork, forming some unit to compete against some other unit, with a contingency plan temporarily under certain circumstances. Practically making contracts with people about this. So it sounds so great. Punsastriya Maituni Bhavametam Tayor Mito Hridaya Grantametam. The bond between male and female forms, the union of male and female forms an emotional bond between them that's lovable. But what is the emotional bond? Vaira. I want this thing, you want it too. So how am I bound to you? Competing for it. Hey, guess what? It's like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with Johnny Depp. When two girls met, there was 4 kids or 5 kids that were picked with the golden tickets, and the 2 girls met. Veruca Salt and the other one. Which one was Veruca? Veruca was the rich girl, and the other one from the mom with the competition complex. They were like, let's be friends, best friends. That is our mutual bond. That really explains the way that we form relationships with each other. But we kid ourselves when we call it friendship. And we walk hand in hand out of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory's room. Loka swayam shresi nashta drashtir yo artan samihita nikamakama. Because we have nikamakama. Nikamakama means, man, these are burning desires. We have burning desires. Samihita, we really are obsessed with our burning desires. You know why we have these burning desires? Because we are hungry. Because we are not happy. A person who is happy doesn't need nothing. The person that has burning desires is the most miserable person. But we think it's great. Because they're motivated for action. But the burningness of our desire makes us do anything. Veruca Salt will betray the other one, the blueberry girl. But they're best friends. And then the whole kicker of the whole thing is Sukha Lesha Hetur. All of this passion is for something. It's for stuff that actually only gives a crumb, a lesh, just a crumb of sukh, pleasure. We work so hard for blah, blah, blah. We go to the gym to look sexy. We go to the beauty parlor to look sexy. We eat nothing to look sexy. We stress out 8 days a week whether or not we look sexy. And then you have sex and you don't even have an orgasm. And then you have sex and it lasted 7 minutes. And then the problems come after it. All of that work, all of that worry, for what? For what? For a crumb of happiness. Sukha Lesha. The motivator, the hetu, is just a crumb of happiness. Can you imagine these dogs are chasing this bone that's this big? And they're fighting with each other. They're killing each other over a little tiny bone that's this big. So they're causing themselves mutual problems. So they have unlimited suffering, ananta dukh. Unlimited suffering by how we treat each other. We treat each other lousy. We treat each other lousy. Why? Because we want something else. And what is that pleasure does that give us? The parent ignores the child because she wants to play a game. And in the game, she's not that happy. She's frustrated. The company betrays the world by exploiting the whatever coffee beans or whatever, and then so that they can make more money, and then how do they feel after they get the money? They never get a headache again? Do they never need drugs? Do they never drink? We're just like dogs and cats. We never stop to think, why am I chasing my tail? Why am I putting so much effort into something so small? Wrecking my actual bigger possible sources of happiness just for the sake of this stupid little thing. Kastvam swayam tad abhigyo vipaschit avidyayam antari vartamanam rishtva punastam sagrana kubuddhim prayojayat utpatagam yathandam. If a compassionate person who understands the reality of things sees someone wandering about in such ignorance, would they tell the person to keep it up? Wouldn't that be just like telling a blind man he's going the right way when he's not? You're doing great. Nothing is wrong. You're perfect. But if you tell somebody that they're not perfect, or if somebody tells us that we're not perfect, we hate it. That's why you have to have patience. You have to be unirritated by the reactions of people. So what he's telling his sons is, look, I'm done here. This is actually not really clear yet, but this is his last active thing that he does in the world. Rishabdev. It's this speech that he gives at this assembly that they went to in Bharatavarsha. So what he's saying is, I'm leaving you the kingdom, so I'm telling you now, you have to give a lot of effort to leading the people, and you have to be really patient, and you have to never give in to just placate them. It's like raising a child. The child just wants ice cream constantly. As a parent, you cannot say no ice cream ever. That would backfire on you. As soon as the kid is old enough, they'll run away from home. But ice cream is not really in their best interest, is it? So you can't just let them have the ice cream all the time and tell them just to eat it and just give up on trying to tell them about healthy food. You have to let them, teach them about ice cream too, and let them eat ice cream and coach the way they eat the ice cream. That's the karma yoga. But you have to keep giving them the gyan, or the information, that actually you would be happier if you could develop that same attraction that you have for ice cream, if you could develop it for broccoli and rice. I'll tell you how many times it is so boring, how many times somebody finds out you're a vegetarian and they say, oh, meat is so delicious. It is so boring to hear that. I must have heard that 65 million times in my life. So, yeah, fine, it's delicious. You think it's delicious. But delicious is just what you like, what you enjoy. If you could put your delicious experience someplace else that isn't actually treating other living beings like hell, that would be better for you. So you can't just say, close all the slaughterhouses, put all the meat eaters on a firing squad and kill them all. That's not the approach either. But you also can't just say, oh, just go ahead, eat. I'm not going to deal with you. You have to be patient and explain things again and again and again and again, patiently. Now this text, very famous text, however, I think people don't really understand I think we don't really not always understand the depth of meaning in this next text. Guror nasasyat swajano nasasyat. Pita nasasyat janani nasasyat. Daivam natatsam napatishcha sasyan. Namochiyat yasamupeta mrityum. If he cannot liberate from all conditions of mortality, then he should not be a guru, friend, father, mother, divinity, or guardian. Honestly, this English translation sucks. The content is there, but the poetry is completely absent, so I may try to rework this. It's not impressive. It doesn't sound impressive, but it does carry the basic meaning. But the Sanskrit is so impressive. Guru nasasyat. Swajano nasasyat. Pita nasasyat. Janani nasasyat. Daivam natatsyan napatishcha sasyan. Namotyatya samapeti mrityum. So what he's saying here is, so the kids may say, I don't know if I can be a leader then. I don't know if I can be a king, etc. If I have to have that much love, really, for the people, that I'm willing to be that patient. I hope that I have not disconnected. I haven't checked in so long. Good, I'm not disconnected. I'll check and see what you're writing later. Right now, you guys are writing to each other, and you probably like that. If he cannot liberate from all his conditions, so the kids might be saying, I don't know if I can do that. And he's saying, fine, then don't do it. If you can't do this, if you can't lead a blind person to a good destination, if you don't have the patience and love and affection for people to deal with them, and they will complain, the blind person will complain, there are thorns on this road. Why are you walking here? It's because the blind person can't see that there's a tiger over there where there's no, or whatever, just stuff like that will happen. And you have to be patient. But if you're not patient, that's okay, but don't take a position of pumsa where you're the one who is the giver. So the statement goes two ways. The first way is that you should not accept anybody as a pumsa who cannot XYZ. And the other equal meaning is you should not become a guide, etc., if you cannot XYZ. So what's the XYZ? Mochayet. Moksha, you have to be able to free or give emancipation to the dependent. Free from what? Mrityum. Basically, mritu means death. So mrityu means mortality. So the mortality is really talking about the limited state of existence, where our sense of self is limited, our sense of I is limited, it's temporary. Samupeta mrityum means the whole samsara, the whole world and universe and everything created around this temporary self. Freedom from that. Liberation from that. If you are a guru, that is what you are supposed to give. That is the end of the story. You have to give that. If you're not giving that, you're not a guru. Not only guru, but anybody who is the benefactor. So he mentions different kinds of people. Guru, swajana means a friend. You're not really a friend. And they are not your friends. The person who is not helping you get free from that extrinsic limitation on yourself is not a guru and is not a friend. Pita na sasyat, janani na sasyat. Pita is dad and janani is mom. Don't become a father or a mother if you cannot take care of your child. And taking care of your child doesn't just mean feeding them. Taking care of your child means liberating them from the ignorance that prevents them from actual happiness. And if you cannot do that, you are not a father or mother. Daivam and pati. Pati means any kind of guardian. Anybody who takes care of, protects somebody else. Husband. The word husband literally means pati or guardian. Stuff like that. The protector of a town or whatever. You don't take that position. You don't belong in that position. Daivam, the position of a god. Nobody is a god who cannot give moksha. Don't accept that person as a god. Don't worship the person that can't give you moksha. So, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that's why Bali Maharaj doesn't follow Shukra's instructions. That's why Bali doesn't follow his guru. That's why Prahlad didn't listen to Hiranyakashipu. Etc., 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 etc. He gives all examples of famous people from the Puranas for each one of these relationships. Okay. All right. That's it. Now, let's try to see what you guys are... Now, if you want me to look at something and like answer a question, please, out of respect, turn down the chatter now in the text thing, and if you have a question about this topic for me, type it in now, and if you don't type in anything else. Okay. Meanwhile, because it takes like 10 seconds or something for that to even get out to your ears, and then it'll take like another 20 seconds or something for you to think about it, write it out. So I'm just going to review quickly everything while we have this little period where you can type in questions, and don't clog it up with coffee talk. Vayam deho deha bhajam niloke kashtan kaman arte vidbhujam ye tapo divyam putraka yena sattvam shuddhed yatsmad brahma sokyam tvanantam mahat sevam dvaramahur vimuktes tamoduram yoshidam sangi sangam mahantaste samachita prashanta vimanyava surda sadho ye Ye va maishe krita saurdharta janeshu dehambara vartikeshu griheshu jayatmaja rati matsu na priti yukta yavarartas chaloke nunam pramatta kurute vikarma yad indriya pritaya apranoti na sadhu manye yat atmanoyam asannapi kleshada asadeha Prabhavasthavar bodha jato yavan jignasata atma tattvam yavad kriyasthavar idam manovai karmatmakam yena sharira bandha pumksastriya mithuni bhavametam tayor mitho hridaya grantim ahu ato griha kshetra sutapta vittar janasya mohoyam aham mameti Yada mano hridaya grantirasya karmanubadho drita ashlateha tada jana samparivartate smat mukta param yat yatihaya hetum hangse gurau mai bhaktyanuvritya vitrishnaya dvandva titikshayacha Sarvatra jantur vyasanavatang. No? What is that? Sarvatra jantur vyasanavagatya jignasaya tapaseha nirvritya. Mat karma bir mat kataya chanityam mat deva sangad gunakirtanan me nirvaira samyopa shamena putra jihasaya deha gehatma buddhe adhyatma yogena vivikta sevya pranendriyatma bhijayena sadhyak satshraddhaya brahmacharyena sashvat asampramadena yamena vacham sarvatra madbhava vichakshanena jnanena vijnana virajitena yogena vrityudyama sattva yukto lingam vyapohet kushalo aham akhyam karmashayam hridaya granti baddham avidyaya saditam apramatta anena yogena yathopadesham samyag vyapohyo parameta yogat. And now today's stuff. Putram shashishyam stanpo gururva maloka kamam madanugrahartha itam vimanyur anushishyad tadgyan na yojayat karmashu karma mudhan kam yojayan manu jotam labeta nipartayam nashta drishtim hikarte loka swayam shresi nashta drishtir yortan samiheta nikama kama anyonya vaira sukalesha hetur ananta dukam chanaveda mudha kastam swayam tad abhigyo vipaschit avidyayam antari vartamanam drishtava punam tam sagrana kubudhim prayojayad utpadagam yathandam guror nasasyat swajano nasasyat pita nasasyat janani nasasyat daivam natatsyan napatishcha sasyan namochayatya samupeta mrityum. Good stuff. All right, what do we got? So I'm just seeing the first one. How to guide warrior type people. That's like all the first part of his life was teaching people how to do the things well. So you teach warriors how to fire a bow. You teach, etc., etc., etc. So that their karma, trishna, their thirst for action is not exacerbated. If you create dry conditions, then fire burns more. But while teaching that, you're also teaching them the next stage up higher. What is the basis for morality? What should this force be used for? Well, who should it protect? How should it be used? Why protect? Why protect? Why protect anything? So you take everybody's karma and you root it into the jnana about how everything is manifested of Bhagavan. And then you connect people. Is this one of your books? This is the Bhagavad Purana. It's thousands of years old from Brahma. But I do translate this, and I have released translations of Volume 1, 2, and 3. You can get them at victorcara.com/books. And the fourth volume, is about 80% finished. And then, right now we're working on translating the fifth. There's 12. What else? Thank you, Lex. What does association with my divinities mean? Very good. So association with the gods is useful because the gods are fixated on Bhagavan, and tad param padam sada pasyanti surya. That's a Rig Veda mantra, isn't it? Om Tad Vishnu Param Padam Sada Pashyanti Surya. The Suras, they always look up to Vishnu as the decider or motivator of their responsibilities and duties. So they are a good example setter. So association with the gods is a good thing. But also the prefix mat, or my divinities, is pretty interesting. In one simple sense, it just means the divinities are mine, because Sada Pashyanti Surya, they're always looking at Vishnu. But in the other sense, it actually means Mad Bhakta. Mad Deva means the people whose consciousness is on me. So that's the other thing that it means. To the Bhaktas. Sunita, hi Vic, what about the problem with giving unsolicited advice? Yes, do not give unsolicited advice. Do not give unsolicited advice. Don't try to be Pumsa if somebody thinks that they're Pumsa. What happens when two men come together? They play sports. See who's stronger. Women have some manliness in them, but discarding that, basically, when two women come together, they try to do something together. They try to accomplish something together. When two men come together, they have fun, or they enjoy each other's company by seeing who's stronger. They compete. So remember, they abstract the Pumsa from a biological male to just the basic concept of the person that's kind of dominant and the giving, the initiator of something. And Striya is the one that's kind of submissive or receiving. So if somebody is not Striya, then you shouldn't try to be Pumsa. If somebody is Pumsa, then be Striya. Learn from them. You can learn from them if you're intelligent. Everybody knows something more than we do about something. Or just also you can learn negatively. You can learn what not to do by observing fools and their behavior. So only become Pumsa to the person who is Striya. Only become an advisor to a person who is inquisitive. Never give unsolicited advice. So I kind of asked you guys not to do this, but you probably didn't hear me because you were typing. So I don't know, is there any other questions? The reason why I love the fact that you guys have a community and you talk with each other, I think that's great. But maybe you guys should make a Sangha independently of this, because it's now to be in the mood of Rishabdev and to give you a little bit of a slap. It's a little bit disrespectful to Bhagavatam if you're typing and talking about something else while the Bhagavatam is being expressed. But on the other hand, it's very good that you're typing in parasparam, discussion amongst each other. That's a very good thing. But I just don't think that they should be concurrent. So whatever. Take that with a grain of salt. But thank you very much. I'm quite indebted to you for being here and keeping me on track with my weekly Bhagavatam work, which is not work in the least. Thanks, everybody. See you later.